Hey everyone, my name is David Dunbar, or the Theme Park Evangelist. So, I am getting started a little later than I anticipated, and you probably noticed the blanket. It's a little cold in my brother's room tonight. And as far as I know, he is either getting home at 9 tonight, or he is going to go spend time with my parents for an hour and then come home. I'm not 100% sure. All I know is I'm starting later because I got out of work a little late. Then I got a few things, which honestly didn't take more than 2 minutes. And then where I really lost a lot of time was between eating dinner and then doing the dishes. So just between those few things, I'm finally getting up here just after 8. Of course, I went and call off my phone for a little bit, and then I finally drained down enough that I was able to finally plug it in and come downstairs and start YouTubing. So the one YouTube video I really wanted to do tonight, I should say, was working my very first Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. But I'm still going in order, so no matter what happens, I'm still going to do my YouTube video on learning all the different positions of Tomorrow Land Speedway. So back to the whole Life as a Working Disney cast member series again after all this time. I've pretty much gotten all caught up on everything. Really have nothing new to report on COVID-19 other than the fact that Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky, has shut down all in dining, or in-person dining, I should say, for the next 12 days or so, maybe even further, I don't know. A lot of restaurants are saying they're going to rebuild anyway. He also wanted churches to stop meeting in person. My church is still meeting in person, but we have discontinued the whole life group thing until further notice. We are doing Zoom meetings, though I'm trying not to be part of that because I personally am not a huge fan of just sitting in front of my computer talking to a bunch of people over the internet for an entire hour when I can just see them in person. That's just me, though. And also, I personally would rather use that time to go and just enjoy myself, go spend time with my parents since I don't see them that often. I know I don't see my friends that often either, but also I think to myself, I'd rather see my parents or I'd rather go out and do something fun. That's just me. Of course, Monday evening I will go see them in person because we're all going to the Cincinnati Zoo. I am so sorry. My foot is super itchy. Sorry, super itchy. So Sunday night, I'm going to the Creation Museum with my other Bible study group. So I'm not YouTubing that night. I'm actually going back the following week to YouTube. So don't worry. That is still happening no matter what. And then the very next night, that YouTube video is happening no matter what. I'm going to be with my Bible study group with my college group, and we'll all be going to the Cincinnati Zoo. And that is a YouTube video that is happening regardless. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm actually getting in for free. Shout out to my man Tim Peterson. Thank you so much for getting me in. He has a annual pass to the Cincinnati Zoo. He loves the zoo. He loves animals, so this will be nice to do. And I am used to going to the zoo because I used to go to Animal Kingdom all the time. I used to go to Busch Gardens every now and then. So, looking forward to this. Also, I used to go to SeaWorld all the time as well. So, this will be a different experience for sure. And I heard this is a pretty big zoo. They have a bit of everything there. I heard they even have a cobra by chance, which I've never actually seen a cobra in person before, so that would be kind of exciting to see. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much what's going on besides going to the Christian Museum, not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday, which I believe is December 13th. Yeah, it is. So, yeah, just be on the lookout for those vlogs. You got 2 more Christmas ones confirmed that are happening. I don't really know if I'll be able to do a 4th one because that'll be the week of Christmas and that'll be a crazy week. So, we'll see what happens that week when we get there. But yeah, let's get into tonight's discussion. So, I was working at Tomorrow Land Speedway back a few years ago, a couple of years ago, and this specific attraction that I learned had like multiple positions. Now the funny thing is, a lot of these positions were for the most part the same, so they were all relatively easy. And when I go over each position, it's going to pretty much be very self-explanatory, so I won't spend a ton of time on certain positions. So, let's get to it. This shouldn't be a terribly long vlog, just because it's such an easy one, but I felt like I should tell you guys about it because it's, part of, my discussion. So, whenever we pull rotation, whenever the computer would decide that it's time to send the next person from one position to the next or whatever, because the computer randomly generated that and all that. And let's just say, for example, I got it. So I would walk all the way to this umbrella that's over by the bridge. You guys probably know all about the bridge. So I would walk all the way over there. And that person would take the paper, which looks more like a receipt paper in all honesty. And then that person would walk it to the next person, onto the next person, and it would be passed on like a baton, in other words. So I would take the piece of paper and hand to whoever was at bridge. And I would stand there until the next person pulled rotation and gave it to me. And then I would take that piece of paper and hand it to the next person that's on the next bit. I would have to go to track 1, line 1, in other words. That would be the next position that would be on rotation. So let's go through this. So I'm walking to bridge, right? And I get there, I hand over the piece of paper, and I just stand there, right, for the next hour. So I'm literally just standing there, looking around my entire surroundings, making sure that everybody is staying safe, and that's it. That is pretty much my main job, making sure all the cars are acting fine. Sometimes you'll get the occasional car that decides that they're going to act up. And I remember one time I had a piece of a car just completely fall off. The car couldn't even move. It was causing a huge backup. I had to call maintenance to come over and fix it. It was a very interesting experience. You won't believe some of the interesting experiences they've had out there, and most of them I didn't even have to deal with, and it was because of those instances that I was glad that I was not working out there. They would always give us a radio, not a walkie-talkie. We use walkie-talkies at my current job, but then we would use an actual radio, and I would have to actually radio a coordinator or radio maintenance and let them know what's going on, or even the manager for crying out loud. Sometimes we were right in front of Space Mountain, so sometimes the managers would come from Space Mountain because that's actually where the manager's office is at. And I say hey to them and all that. Sometimes I see coordinators walking back and forth, basically supervisors. So sometimes I would see the occasional cast member walking back and forth. You always had to have steel-toed boots on whenever you cross, because you had to walk across the track twice, once to get to Space Mountain from where I was, and another time depending on where you were going, if you were going back towards Tomorrow Land Speedway break room. And the funny thing is, because we were next door neighbors to Space Mountain, a lot of cast members that worked at Tomorrow Land Speedway were cross-trained. In other words, they knew how to work Space Mountain as well. They knew how to operate it, and vice versa. So you would see cast members going over to Space Mountain to work over there quite a bit. Of course, you had to wear a different costume if you were going to work over at Space Mountain. You had to wear the official Tomorrowland Attractions cast member costume, or just costume. However, though, up to a point you could get away with wearing that costume at Tomorrow Land Speedway, but they preferred if you wear the Tomorrow Land Speedway costume at Tomorrow Land Speedway. You know how that is. Tomorrow Land Speedway was one of those very laid back attractions because you spent your entire day outside. We were like a family. It was just mainly watching guests, I should say, just driving around all day. Like at Bridge, it was kind of boring because I literally would just be standing there and just watching guests. And I can tell you guys, 9 times out of 10, nothing really happened over there. And I say 9 times out of 10 because I mean that. Some other cast members might say, well, more like 7 out of 10, but I felt more like it was 9 times out of 10 because on, I would say, 90% of the time, nothing really happened, you know? It was only 10% of the time something actually happened. 90% of the time, you would actually just be standing there and just watching guests go around you in a big circle, and you would be listening to these lawnmower engines, you could say, and you would be hoping and praying you were going to get wet if it was raining, and you would be hoping and praying you were going to get burned alive, and that little bit of shade was actually going to go a long ways, and then you were dreading going to the next position, depending on what time of the day it was, especially if it was like midday, and it was a busy day, so you knew that you were going to have to go to track 1, line 1. It was also funny when I had to go there like first thing in the morning, and I always dreaded that the coordinators were going to open up track 1 or track 2, and well, track 2 at least wasn't too bad, but I was always dreading that they're going to open up track 1 when I was working over at Bridge at the time, because I'm like, oh no, please don't open track 1, and you'll understand that when we get there. Because you're over there for a good hour. Sometimes rotation went faster, but most of the time it was at least an hour that you were just standing there just waiting. And you can't leave, so if you like have to use the restroom all of a sudden, I don't know what to tell you. Unless you like call for a coordinator to on your radio to say, hey, I need to use a restroom. You could actually text message with it, but it wasn't easy. But that was like the only other way you could get a hold of someone. So you're literally just standing there. And if you suddenly had the urge, you were forced to go like, hey, I need someone to come and relieve me for like a few minutes. You know, it's one of those things. Like, it was the only way you had to communicate with anybody. If that radio went out, you were kind of screwed because the radio did have, you know, battery problems every now and then. So you had to make sure that it had, you know, good battery. Most of the time I use that radio to only like call and say, hey, my battery's getting low, just to let you know. But you know, otherwise I can't really say that anything remotely exciting ever happened at that position. So track 1, line 1, we only really opened if it was like really busy or right around midday. And that position is the one that's literally right next to the wall, and let me tell you, it's about 120, 130 degrees in the middle of the summer in Central Florida at that track, and you have to be dressed cool, you have to stay hydrated, you have to keep something cool on your face. I would literally take a washcloth that they would give us, because they were very good about coming out there quite often, like frequently. And I was one of those people that was really good about it too. I would go out there constantly, see if anybody needed water, see if anybody needed washcloths. And you would just take that washcloth that was saturated in ice water and you would just dump it all over your face, and you wouldn't even care about just rinsing it out. I was like, who cares? The sun is so hot, you're gonna just dry off anyway in like 5-10 minutes. I'm not even playing, because just where you were standing, it was that hot. And people complained to me, you know, why, you know, do you hate the heat so much? That's one of the reasons why, because I had to work at a job like that, and it made you hate the heat. And honestly, the cold's not any better over there. And I can tolerate the cold up to a point, but even the cold can get to me after a while. It's like my body can handle the cold better than it can handle the heat. And this attraction, honestly, will tell you why, but you'll learn more about that when I get into the summer months. It's very interesting. So, most of the time, if you were on track, and this is the same exact thing for track 1, for track 2, for track 3. Track 4 is a little different, so we're going to do a little bit of a different story for that one. But the first 3 tracks, at least, if you were track 1, you were going to be doing like number 1, number 2, number 3, stuff like that. Tracks 1 and 3 were the different ones because those were the left-handed driving, which I remember correctly, those were the American cars. So I always consider the right number 2 and number 4 the British cars are the right handed driving ones, so the steering wheel would be on the passenger side, and the left-handed ones would be the one where the steering wheel's on the correct side of the car in American terms. So if you were at tracks 1 and 3, it was kind of interesting. So you had to go number 7, number 8, number 9, and then it would start back all over again. And the reason why we had to turn our hand this way, if we put it out like this, to a guest it would be, oh, I need to stop. So we have to turn our hand backwards so the guest would know for a fact that we weren't telling them to stop or anything. And that's all that line 1 really had to be responsible for. Now, line 1 sometimes had to be responsible for the entire track, and the reason why is because line 2 was there to help line 1 in the event that it was too much responsibility to also worry about 10, and then 11 and 12 you would have to point at. Now, I used to do this and that, but that was too confusing. So what they told line 2 to do is you would do number 10, and then you would go, and then number 11, then you would say number 12, and you have to use the 2 fingers, because you don't want them to be offended if you went like this. It's like, oh, how dare you, point it like that. I wish I could show you guys a little clip, but I don't have that ability tonight because I don't have my phone. And plus, I would have to use my phone the entire time if I was going to vlog, and then use the laptop to play clips, and that's how I've done those kind of vlogs in the past, because I don't have those special abilities like other YouTubers. But anyway, line 2 sometimes had to walk away in the event that they needed to add more cars on, in the event they had to take cars off the track, in the event that they needed to, or sometimes they could get away with leaving in the event that they need to use a restroom like really, really badly. Sometimes they had to go on to another track and help somebody else out with at removing a car in the event that there was nobody else available. Some kind of things like that. That's more or less the reason why line 1 had to be ready at any given time to be able to take control of telling all the cars where to go. So whenever you were line 1, basically what would happen was, if I remember correctly, line 1 would have to be standing kind of over here somewhere. Like, let's just put it this way. Let's imagine you're in a big, like, rectangle, right? And there's a back end to it, and there's a front end to it. It's easy for me to picture it in my head, so I'm going to try my best to explain it to you guys. But let's just imagine that for all three tracks, there's a big rectangle. So line one would have to stay in the very back, kind of near the left side of it. You would have to be standing adjacent to the track, but you can't be standing too close to the track that you can get hit. So you have to be standing kind of next to it without being on top of it. Line 2 would have to be doing the same thing, but they would have to be standing on the front of that track. The only time that you were allowed to move was when you were going to your cars. You had to stop at each car. You had to tell them, make sure your seatbelt's buckled, and then you would have to go push to stop. Sorry, wow, I said that completely wrong. Push to go, lift to stop, no bumping. You would have to point at the placard. You're free to go. Have fun. And that's all you had to say. It was so boring, and I thought greeter at a grocery store or a retail store was bad enough, but this was way worse. I'm just saying, greeter in general. I'm not even going to be specific. Because I can tell you right now, being a greeter just in general, any grocery store is not easy because you're literally just standing there. But this was just as bad or even worse because you literally have to stop at each car. You weren't always guaranteed that they were going to listen to you. Most of the time, if it was kids, they were just going to slam on the gas and you're going to have to go, no, 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 no. And it was hot. All this carbon monoxide was out there. And you're just like, oh, come on. And you're just anxiously waiting to go home or anxiously waiting to go on that break or your lunch. Maybe even get that early release. That was always nice. Sometimes you wanted that overtime, so you're just like, keep it going, keep it coming, But, yeah, you would literally move from, let's say 7 to 9, or you would move from 1 to 3, and then you would literally turn yourself back around and go back the way you came. And you would, see Tomorrow Land People Mover driving around, or you would see the occasional the fireworks going off and all that. Or you would see just guests walking around, and that was about it. You didn't know any other life. This is all I do all the time. And sometimes you felt like you were walking in the straight line so much that you're going to put a giant hole right where you were walking, but you never did. And you just could not believe that you weren't even going to melt on the spot because sometimes it got that hot out there or whatever. And it just seemed like the day was never going to end because just that boring, But at least by the time you got to line 2, you knew you had something good coming up. So line 2 was always a good sign. Because at least you had a different job coming up soon. Plus you had the ability to leave every now and then. So you're like, yay, at least something is good happening now. And at the same time, sometimes you would get to line 2, and then you would get that break, and then you'd go right back where you came, or sometimes you pull rotation again, and you have to go right back all over again. You gotta go, no, I just did this. Are you serious? But, every now and then, it worked out for you. Sometimes you would get all the way to grouper. So grouper 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 were the exact same thing. You literally would take each group of guests and you would say, how many? And you would start with, let's say you're at track 1 and 2. So you would say, and for a fact that 2 adults and 1 kid can go together. You know that 3 adults can't go together. It's just a no-go in a Disney ride. So let's say you had 2 adults and 1 kid, so you could put all 3 on number 1 right away, and you just keep going from there. You fill up number 1, you fill up all of track 1, and then you would start on track 2. I could fill up both sides every single time before all the cars would show back up. And I was keeping that line moving like constantly, just like that. That's all you gotta do. I was probably one of the fastest groupers. I wouldn't say I was the fastest. I'm saying I was one of the fastest. And I was always trying to compete with the other side, like, who's faster now? I always felt like it was a game to me, because it was always something I could look forward to. It was like, yes, I'm finally going to grouper. And before you could go to grouper, you would actually have to enter a vehicle and go to it. Now, the reason why you had to let the cast member know that you were going over and you would have to actually do this, which means I'm crossing, is because in the event that a guest literally decided to drive up behind you and slam into you, would at least notify the cast member that you were at least going across. And if something did happen to you, at least they knew you were going. And at least you also let them know, which means that you were being liable for your actions. Now, let's say I was a complete butthead and I decided I'm just going to cross anyway without saying anything. Then, if something had happened to me, it's no longer Disney's problem. It's now mine, and that's not okay anytime that you're on the clock. And, that's just understandable, period. And we all know Disney's very big about safety. We all know if you're wanting to get on that tram, you always have to stay behind that yellow line until the tram comes to a full and complete stop. We all know it's foolish to try to cross that yellow line in the event that tram could run over your foot. Sometimes we like to think that we can do things, but Disney is like, we're not okay with that. And that's why Disney is always so big about safety. Safety this, safety that. And you just got to understand that in Disney's biggest key is safety. And that's something that I learned while I was working there more than one way, as you guys can imagine. So, that being said, grouper was always one of those things that I always made sure that everybody was being safe, and I never let kids ride alone together unless they were over that certain age, and that was another big one that I was looking for, because that's another safety concern. If I ever had two kids under the age of 13 or 14, I should say 14, then I would not let them ride together and try to figure out where's your parent at. Oh, that's so nice that your parent thinks that you can go do this by yourself, but guess what? Disney policy says you can't, so guess what? We're going to have to get a hold of your parent for you. And just kind of went from there. The only track that was very different than anything else was track 4, and that was because of the fact that that was the disability access track, so you were constantly being forced to turn off the first and third vehicle for safety reasons in the event that the first vehicle decided to fly right off while you were trying to load people onto it in case someone, or in case a guest that was not part of the disability access group decided they're just going to take right off on you. And you don't want them to come crashing in from behind later on or anything. And also, you didn't want anything to happen to that group of people in case they were trying to get in the car, and what if they accidentally stepped on the gas pedal and they fell over while the vehicle was lurching forward? Those kind of things. And then the third vehicle, we didn't want that lurching into the second vehicle while they were loading either. So that was one of those things I could definitely understand very well. So I did not argue with that one whatsoever. And that was something we always dealt with. We always had to flag the vehicle, so we always knew who was who, and that way we were watching for them whenever they came up, and we would always have to do this as soon as we saw them. That means hold those cars. So as soon as they would get back and get into position, we turn them right off again because I didn't want anything to happen to those poor guys while they were trying to load or even unload for that matter. And when it's busy, you're going to get more of them, which is understandable. And sometimes it might make your day go longer, or sometimes it make your day go slower. I would say, honestly, one of the other hardest positions, which to me didn't really bother me just because I have a lot of guest experience, and most of it I got from Disney, of course, was a cross between FastPass and Grader. Now, to me, FastPass was a lot harder than Grader by a long shot, and that's because guests literally think they can sneak through FastPass for any legit reason. I've had guests will say, well, I already did that FastPass and it's just not clearing the system yet, so I should be allowed to ride it. And this is a general thing for any Disney attraction. FastPass at Tomorrow Land Speedway is pretty much the same thing everywhere. FastPass is stricter at every attraction. When I worked at Test Track, they said that you could let guests in up to 8 minutes early, and that was it. Tomorrow Land Speedway is 10. It's different everywhere. That's just how it is, Ooh. Sounds like my brother is home. Can't tell if he's going to come downstairs or not, though. But, that's just something that you will deal with if you are a Disney cast member and you work at the very front of the attraction. You're going to get all kinds of crazy guests. You're going to get all kinds of different questions. You're going to get people that will try to take advantage of the Fast Pass. It is what it is. And I've met a lot of nice guests at Fast Pass, and I've also met a lot of mean guests. Before we turned everything at the greater position over to the Disney Operation Command Center or Control Center, we used to send red necklaces, you could say, through the line. We would send them like once every 30 minutes. And this was our only way to time the ride, but Disney put a lot of new technology in a lot of their queue lines, and it made it a lot more efficient to see what the line wait time actually was without us setting those dumb things through the line every 30 minutes. Especially since a lot of the guests were like, why do I have this? And I wasn't even lying when I said to one of the coordinators, I said, when I used to get those all the time at Space Mountain, I honestly thought that was part of the queue line. They said, no. They said that was there to help them monitor how long the queue line was, and I'm like, oh. But yeah, I guess every attraction had that at one point. Those those red placards that would be randomly sent to select guests, and I can't tell you how many of those I got over the years. And you would just carry it all the way through until you got to the grouper, the person that loads the vehicle, in other words. And then eventually they would get all the way back to the front of the attraction again. So that was pretty much most of the attraction. Now, there is one more position I can talk to you guys about, and that's merge. So merge at Tomorrowland Speedway was my favorite. This is probably one of the easiest positions by far, other than the front of the attraction, which most of the cast members would tell you, oh yeah, we loved Fast Pass. We loved Grader. It was nice, got to meet all kinds of guests up there. But merge was my favorite because of the fact that all you had to do was literally just stand there and you would just talk to the guests and you see how their day was going. No one was really ever mean to you at Tomorrowland Speedway merge. I actually heard that one of the hardest merges is Space Mountain, but Tomorrowland Speedway doesn't usually get a lot of rude guests. So, and not to mention, we never really got a lot of Fast Pass guests either. So I usually would just kind of stand there and let the line empty out as much as I possibly could. In the actual line itself, now you had the line that was underneath the building part, but then you would also have that line that was out there that was going from here all the way around. You probably remember that, guys. So that was always the part that I would try to let it empty out at least a little bit. I would let it get to a certain part, and then I would just fill it up as much as I could. That was just how I worked. A lot of people, especially coordinators or supervisors, said that was the position I was not that great at. I actually didn't think I was that bad, but then again, most people, especially if they're more experienced than you, you are generally more knowledgeable about how you do on things than others. And I did get a lot more compliments as a grouper than I did as a merger. And that's understandable. But merge was basically just separating the standby from the fast pass and making sure that the people that were part of disability access service knew where they were going. But yes, I will admit that grouper was the position I did the best at, and I did get a ton of compliments because I was that fast at it. I was always very good at numbers. Okay, so I did go a little longer than I anticipated on. I didn't think it was going to be this long, but at least I did get this vlog done tonight, and I will try to get the next one done, if not tomorrow, maybe. It depends on what my brother's doing. I'll try to get it done in the next few days, and don't forget about Monday's Cincinnati Zoo. Alright, guys. Always remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Have a great night. Peace out.